Greetings, fellow seekers. This is the Lord Kragan speaking, and I bring you great news. Warhammer Underworlds Online is upon us. Soon, Games Workshop's premier competitive game will hit the internet and the PC market proper. Many of you viewers, most likely, will be either new, having been attracted by the announcement of the PC port, or have gotten a few matches under your belt in the tabletop version. Either way, this video is for you, the novice, the initiate, those that haven't gotten too much traction into the system. This video and the ones that will follow will cover all the bases, be assured. Veterans, though, may want to skip the introductory section I will do soon, because I will go and speak about things you may already know, and thus you may not be interested into. So it's desirable you skip into the comments section, skip to the comment section, use the timestamp I'll leave there, and skip to the actual recommendations if you do know what I will be talking about. With this disclaimer said, we will do a bit of an intro and an explanation. What is Warhammer Underworlds? Chances are that if you're watching this video, you already know what I'm talking about. But if you're new, brand new, here comes a bit of a primer. The first thing is that it's a game of skirmish level. It's played between two warbands of 3 to 9 fighters, where you battle against your opponent or opponents and try to gain as much victory points as possible, which are called glory points. Glory points are achieved in two means. The first is by killing opponents, which grant a victory point per kill. Now, the bulk of your scoring, though, will come from the objective cards. Objective cards will have a task set in the text, and you will find it if you do achieve the requirements of the card, you will receive as much glory as the card says, which is represented in the golden circles, which are the glory tokens. Objectives will make or break your game. They are very important because they are your main way of scoring victory points, your main way of achieving glory. Thus, it's of utmost importance to have a deck you are comfortable with and your warband will be able to pursue efficiently. And if you're new, you may be thinking, okay, there's 12 objective cards, and you have a chance to draw objective cards before each turn. I can only have 3 cards in my hand, and I only have 3 draws. So I could get rid of a horrible first draw, could I? Yes, you could, but it could be a costly mistake. Warhammer Underworlds is a game of economy, both in terms of actions, of activity, as well as decision making. You only have 12 activation tokens to achieve your objectives, so you must have a very well thought out plan. But you also must craft your deck with a very clear idea, and discarding 3 objective cards can be disastrous. Let me showcase you why. If you look at the image in front of you, you'll be able to see 2 decks. Your opponent and you have 12 cards, which will score 15 glory points. If you were to discard 3 cards for 3 glory, you'll be at a disadvantage because you could only skill 12 victory points. Aside from those you would able to snag if you manage to kill a few opponents, which may be against you if your opponent has less fighters than you. But nevertheless, you are setting yourself at a disadvantage if you do not, if you discard these objective cards. And you may be thinking, Kragan, what you're talking about? You can only achieve 9 objective cards, can't you? No, it's not like that. I'm going to explain you why, but it's not like that. Your opponent will be able to cycle through the whole deck. But the first thing to know is to synergize with your warband. As I said, this is a game of economy. You only have 12 activations, 12 actions, 12 chances at victory. So you must have a well-crafted plan. You must have a narrowed down path to victory. That is, if you want to go aggressive, you will go aggressive. You will not include things that are based around holding terrain or holding your home territory. You will generally go for an aggressive route. That way, you simplify your deck, your amount of movements, your amount of movement types, and narrow it down to a very specific set of activities, which is very, very important because you'll know what you'll do, and thus you'll be able to plan accordingly. With this said, we'll jump onto the first tip. The first tip, by the way, hello veterans. The first tip is to seek objectives that score immediately. Objectives that score immediately have two advantages. The first is that they provide glory mid-turn, because when they score immediately, when you do the activity, you'll be able to gain the glory point. If you're a weak weapon with weak attack that cannot kill enemies easily, this can be a great boon, because you gain traction before you have to do the grueling task of killing opponents. If you are a weapon with strong fighters and manage to kill a fighter from the opposing side, then you get further mileage from your actions, which is further better. But the immediately scoring objectives have another advantage aside from the early glory, and that is that they allow you to draw another card. Yes, because you must always have 3 cards in your hand. That means if you score an objective before the end of the turn, you get to draw another card into your hand. This is important because even seasoned players that have gone to a few tournaments may not know this, and it's important to know because it means the difference between scoring 9 objectives to be able to cycle through the whole deck and achieve thus as much glory as your deck is capable to. So at least you should include 3 objective cards that score immediately in your deck, so you are able to score the whole deck. Ideally, if you're playing aggressively, I include at least 7 to 8 cards because they give you a lot of momentum. But that's an aside. And I want to make a bit of a word of warning on this. And it's the second tip, which is to strike a balance in your objective portfolio. Whenever you fed for the first time of immediately scoring objectives, you may be thinking about making a deck based only in this kind of objectives. And I'm going to say, it's potent. You can win a few events with that. I've won them. But you're setting yourself at a disadvantage. I mean, I don't want you to end in a situation like the draw I'm showcasing in the first turn. But imagine you have 12 cards. Your opponent too. He has 15 glory, but since you only have immediately scoring objectives, you can only achieve 12 glory points, nevertheless, because objectives that score immediately, generally speaking, only are worth a victory point, a glory point. That way, you're setting yourself in the back foot if you rely too much on low scoring but easy objectives. You need as much a high threshold as possible, because that way your opponent has a harder time beating you. With this, I mean to have a well-balanced portfolio. You should include immediately scoring objectives, as well as objectives that are easy, but you should also challenge yourself a bit whenever you do a match, because that way you achieve a high amount of glory, which means that your opponent has to do a higher effort to beat you, and he may not be able to cut that mark. With this said, we will jump onto the third tip. The third tip is minimize your opponent's interactions, or make him do the work for you. Shadespire is a game purely competitive almost. Your opponent doesn't want you to win. You don't want your opponent to win, unless you're doing a price fixing, which you shouldn't, but nevertheless. It's important that you get cards that require as less of a say from your opponent as possible, because again, your opponent doesn't want you to win. So it's important to seek ways that will minimize his intervention, his amount of, interaction, so to speak. That way, you will be able to score reliably without him foiling your plans, which can be very annoying. And in this vein comes a second type of things, those that use your opponent's efforts in your favor. An example would be the card Martyred. Martyred activates whenever your fighter is the first to die, so whenever your opponent is doing an effort to win. I mean, If you think about it, it's important because, again, you only have 12 tokens, 12 chances. But if all of a sudden your opponent's tokens, your opponent's chances are helping you to achieve victory, all of a sudden you are doubling up your chances at victory. And your success rate, thus, is increasing incredibly. So, to summarize, get your opponent to intervene as least as possible so he doesn't foil your plans, or make him do the dirty work so you can be able to reap the benefits and foil his plans. Indeed, and something of a pain comes the fourth tip, which is to get cards that complement each other, cards whose requirements are nestled together. I'm going to do an example for this. Your opponent plays a ploy card. As a reaction, you use Duel of Wits. You played a reaction, so you're able to score Treacherous Foe, but you played a ploy. You scored an objective. So you're 2/3 of the way to achieve Master of War, and since you got glory from the objective, you can equip an upgrade. That means with a single maneuver from your opponent, you were able to clear 2 objectives out of your backlog. That's the basic idea I want to give you. That with a single action, you're able to score multiple objectives. Another example would be using Oberyn from Steelheart's Champions to attack an opponent of 3 wounds. You kill him, thus you gain a glory point from the kill, one from using lightning strikes because you killed an opponent with a charge, and precise use of force because you killed with enough damage to do so. That's the basic idea, that you're able to kill an opponent, you're able to do an action, and with this action you set yourself in a way to score multiple objectives. That way you give yourself a bit of leeway, because if you are able to achieve, for example, in the first activation 2 objectives, you have 11 tokens but 10 objectives. That means that you can allow yourself room for a failure, which can increase if you are able to clear multiple objectives further times. In this aspect, objectives that require scoring other objectives or amassing glory are incredibly useful because you're doing the requirements regardless of the content of the other actions, which means it's incredibly useful if you're able to score or save up your glory reliably. With this said, I want to give you, I will repeat this just to hammer further the point. Whenever you build a deck, it's important you seek cards that, upon doing one, you're setting yourself in the path to achieving another objective too. You must be forging your way to victory on multiple fronts each step you give. Now, yes, we will skip on to the 5th tip, which is to avoid the abuse of late game cards. Late game cards are the ones that I'm listing every time. These are very potent. Yes, they give you multiple glory points, but they will not trigger until very late in the game. And this can mean that if you get these cards at the very beginning, or earlier than desired, you're basically gimping yourself. You're wasting glory, you're wasting ways to achieve points, and thus you're limiting your chances at victory. You should not skew them completely, because they are potent, but you should limit their usage, maybe 1 at 2 at best if you're fancying your chances, but you shouldn't risk too much. With this said, we will go on to the last tip. The 6th tip is to avoid trap cards. This is really common sense, but it's important to look into the cards and think, is this feasible? Trap cards give you a ton of glory, yes, but they are incredibly hard to achieve, or outright impossible. Total annihilation will be impossible to achieve if you are facing, for example, a 7-man warband. You will not be able to kill that many. You just will not. So you're basically wasting a card slot there, and you're wasting your chances of glory. You are further gimping yourself, so you are better off without it. This was the 6th tip. With this, we can conclude the phase of recommendations. Now, I would I will propose an idea for you newcomers. If you want to play an aggressive deck, I recommend you include like 6-7 cards that are scoring immediately, whatever their purpose, but generally speaking about hurting your opponent. Then get a pair of cards that are based around scoring if you score objectives. And maybe 1 or 2 late game cards. I think that will be interesting for you for a starting deck. I leave the contents to you because you must experiment, it must be your game. But I hope you've picked up a few lessons, especially you, those that are struggling. Those that are veterans, I hope I've been useful. And if you think I'm wrong in something, I welcome the correction. Thank you very much, by the way. Maybe we'll see one day.